Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, as we welcome our viewers, our listeners on the various platforms of Salam Media on this beautiful day of Jummah Mubarak to one and all. I am Inayat Wadi, and we are kicking off this morning taking a look at the political dynamics that have been playing out in Pakistan for a very, very long time, which is of major concern. Now, there was a very interesting piece that was written by Professor of Law, Religion and Global Politics, Professor Junaid Ahmad. And this article was published in Muslim Views. And it talks about Zionism's invincible pharaoh and the unraveling of Pakistan's crisis of power. And this raises many questions with regard to Pakistan, its ruling elite, legitimacy of the Pakistani government, and also in terms of how the political trajectory in Pakistan is being reshaped. And this is what we are unpacking this morning with my guest, Prof. Junaid Ahmed. Professor, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome and Jazakallah khairan so much for your time.
Assalamu alaikum. It's always my pleasure to be with you.
Yes, Prof. When I read this article, obviously there's just so much that one can actually take away from this article and unpack in getting a deeper understanding on how Pakistan's politics have been reshaped or it's still evolving into reshaping the trajectory and also where the political elite is taking Pakistan politically.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Sorry. You must forgive the somewhat provocative titles of some of these essays, but as I was saying to one of the sisters, I feel that South Africa is one of the few places where we can really get this message out because there has been, as many of you probably have noticed, and what I was trying to capture in this article, this very scandalous silence throughout much of the world, particularly in the West, in terms of the coverage of what's going on. We must remember this is the second largest Muslim country in the world, the largest by far in terms of active military personnel, nuclear armed. And so these massive developments are taking place around the figure of Imran Khan, very popular. I mean, if he wasn't popular before, now he's through the roof in terms of Pakistan. In fact, I was just joking that if they not only managed to make him the most popular in Pakistan, but I think there are enraging other Muslim despotic regimes because they're making him the most popular figure in the entire Muslim world by this stage. And so, what we have going on in Pakistan, as you correctly pointed out, these developments. You can go all the way back to the regime change operation against him in April 2022, very much backed by obviously the United States and orchestrated on the ground by the generals. Since that time, just to, for those of you who I know, the vast majority of which already know that context, but yes, since that time, he's been the only prime minister that's removed from power. That, of course, that's not unique to him. Pakistan, of course, has had a history of military coups and military dictatorships and imprisonment of prime ministers, although most of the time those ousted prime ministers take the exit route, the safe exit route that the military gives them to go to Saudi, they go to the United Emirates, they go to the United Kingdom. Of course, Khan did not do that, and it was the first moment in which an ousted prime minister has mass demonstrations in support of him. And that was the unique thing, and that's what we've continued to see. That's important context for why he continues to reign more popular. Of course, every single action they've undertaken since then has only made him more popular, and that is, of course, the vicious targeting of him and supporters, massive political prisoners, his own position, which is now become a major issue if it wasn't there before, received much more coverage precisely because his sons put out this phrase as give us at least some proof of life. He's been kept more of longer than a month. He was in solitary confinement. Usually, there's some family members that can meet with him, some doctor at some point. This was more than a month. And so his sons put out this statement, we demand proof of life. And that became in some ways what inspired a new, more intense moment in the terms of the anti regime protests within the country itself.
Yes, but also, Prof, when one looks at the leadership in Pakistan, the current leadership at this point
Yeah.
in time, whether we're talking about political leadership, whether we're talking about the military, we're talking about Asim Munir as well.
Yeah.
And again, looking at the level of repression that is taking place, and also at the same time, this is obviously providing a platform for resistance. And your article speaks about emerging resistance and how this is actually shaping the country's political trajectory.
No, absolutely, and one of the central points I try to make here, and of course, my incredible gratitude to Muslim Views again, one of the few platforms, not just literally in the world, that is now airing this, and I think that inshallah they will be remembered as one of the kind of pioneering platforms in giving coverage to what's going on. But I think that what we are seeing now, it's the resistance was always there. It's just taking much sharper and more radical turns, I think, which is absolutely necessary. One of the important points, as you say, in terms of the current political power structure in Pakistan, in the past, it was always like, well, it is the military rulers, or here it is the politicians. In this moment, one of the, I think, very revealing, instructive moments for the resistance itself is to see that power structure as entailing both the military hierarchy, the generals, as well as virtually every single political party in the country colluding against this movement of Imran Khan and the movement for justice. You literally have the two dominant parties that have historically dominated Pakistani political life: the Pakistan Muslim League of the House of Sharif and the Pakistan People's Party of the Bhutto Zardari. The one is the president Zardari. Shehbaz Sharif is the clownish prime minister, and they're colluding with the military. So one of the in some ways, the instructive parts of this incredibly brutal regime is that exposes virtually the entire political class and the generals as being part of the problem, to which Khan represents real kind of grassroots mobilization. Khan is the symbol, but what he's been able to do is inspire tens and tens of millions who before were not actors in the political scene in Pakistan, but now are demanding that that they be given a voice in Pakistan.
Yes, and also I think what the article also touches on, and this is very important as well to highlight, is the geopolitical relevance that Pakistan is seeking. And you speak about things like photo ops,
Oh yeah.
performative briefings, all these things. Again, where Pakistan is actually seeking this relevance, it's seeking acceptance on a geopolitical level.
No question about it. And sometimes I want to even say to myself, maybe I'm oversimplifying things. But actually, I don't think I am. I mean, literally, we have a military ruler now, Asimur, whose longevity in power depends on a tweet from Donald Trump. Literally, it's that ridiculous at this point. I mean, people, and I sometimes I say that it's embarrassing, but I do encourage them to see the when Shehbaz Sharif and the Chief of Army Staff Asim Munir were visiting Washington, and Shehbaz Sharif comes back and gives that incredibly embarrassing Sharm el Sheikh Nobel Peace Prize, even though the prize was already awarded. Once again, nominating Trump, and Munir going to the White House and literally showing to Trump these are the minerals that you can come and take from the country. So it's an absolute embarrassment by this stage, but it does point to their reliance on empire, and of course particularly the Zionist component of that empire. This is one of the things I try to highlight, is that what we are missing in all of this is what the Zionists thought they were accomplishing, and it seemed like they were, which was the pacification of this incredibly important, arguably the most important country that could potentially pose a threat to Zionism. Like I said, largest military by far, nuclear armed. So that was supposed to be this huge victory, in which we really thought. I mean, people like me thought it was depressingly going in that direction. But that has been completely derailed by Khan and his movement for justice, which is why I think why this explains that. I was saying earlier, if you think about it, every single power center within the country, the United States, the United Kingdom, obviously the Zionists and the backed Gulf regimes, all of them opposed to this one guy and his movement. That should tell one something. That should tell how these Zionists throughout the world, obviously with the military might of empire, are so afraid of this one guy. And the reason is, we must remember again, as much as this scandalously does not get sufficient coverage, is Pakistan is an incredibly important country. As embarrassing as its political leaders, they may portray it as being, and correctly, they should be embarrassed for their shameful behavior. The country is actually incredibly important for, in some ways, Zionist and imperial, their ongoing power and hegemony throughout the Muslim world.
But also, Professor Junaid, something has got to give, because this cannot be sustained,
Yeah.
this cannot be maintained. And we've seen it for a very, very long time, whether we're talking about the Musharraf era, even at the time when Benazir Bhutto was in power, Nawaz Sharif, Shabazz Sharif now. Something at the end of the day has got to give. And just looking at Pakistan, looking at the masses in Pakistan, looking at the people of Pakistan, and I'm sure that many of them, obviously, and I think large part of the population are showing disillusionment, and something has got to give. I mean, what would be the solution?
No question about it. And I think this is what marks this period as being radically different from prior. I mean, we should remember, usually the shelf life of every military dictator is about a decade. Now we are just moving into the second or third year. In some ways, I like to say that this is not only incredibly vicious, but it's also incredibly stupid. I mean, the actions, as I was just saying, that Asim Munir and others have taken, it's only just increased the popularity, delegitimized their position. They are literally ruling just through brute force. And as I was saying, the tweets of Donald Trump supporting them. How long will that last? And so what we have right now, you're absolutely right. These things, it cannot stay. I mean, this cannot sustain itself. And so we have reached that juncture. Now, of course, I mean, I can't make any predictions at the moment, but it is it is clear to me that even those forces, particularly in the intellectual circles in Pakistan, etc., that wanted to attempt to defend this current regime and to demonize Khan, they can no longer do it. It's so obvious what's going on. So I think, look, I mean, I think inshallah we will see a time, I think very shortly, in which they will not be able to continue to hold. They've been so delegitimized, whether it's the military generals or the dominant political parties. And at that point, we will then see how not just the local regime, but what type of support they will or will not get from those forces right now. I'm saying that we're very much behind you. Again, I do not think these are fundamental calculations on behalf of the US foreign policy establishment or even the military establishment. Right now, it is literally Trump and his engagement with these people. I think that they are probably much more intelligent people, I would like to think, or maybe they're not, within the US and Zionist power structure, that's saying that, well, these guys are so illegitimate at this point. How much do we want to continue to invest in a character like Asim Munir? This is a serious consideration, and I do think that in some of the articles now coming out and say these dominant mainstream establishment publications, Foreign Affairs, etc., there's a recognition there that, as we all know, that once these guys become, in some ways, liabilities for empire Zionism, they're more than willing to let them go, as we've seen with Musharraf and others as well.
Well, certainly, and also there are many other examples right across the entire world where, when one looks at the Arab Spring, what had taken happened to Hosni Mubarak, and there
Absolutely.
are just so many examples.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The Noriegas and so on. The list goes on and on. These are backed. And then once they're seen as liabilities, the empire has no problem in disposing with them. But as I said, the difference this time is the Musharrafs and all of these guys. I mean, that's not to say that they were unpopular from the beginning. But in terms of mass resistance, it must also be said that literally the last year or so of Musharraf is when you actually saw that domestically, whether it's 2007 and 8, and even that, I was just joking, is that he rearranged some of the Supreme Court justices, and that inspired the lawyers' movement. we are in a very different situation right now in which this is a mass kind of movement trying to figure out, because they really have, they don't have the, say, the experience of the anti-colonial movements, the anti-apartheid movement, so they are also learning the tools of resistance. Khan himself, I say, is someone who is, we should acknowledge, learned on the job. He did not know the extent of the viciousness, the brutality of the system, especially the military component. He had a good understanding of the political class, but the he always thought that the, as most Pakistanis they ensure that the generals are still, they have that patriotic fervor and so on. He realized very quickly this is just rhetorical. Privately, they're all making deals with the empire, with Zionists, and so on. So people, just like Khan, have developed a far more radical political consciousness as they're seeing things in front of them.
Well, Prof, as always, an absolute pleasure, having you with us, and we wish you well. And once again, Jazakallah, we thank you for your time with us right here on Salam Media.
Jazakallah so much. You guys are giving the coverage to, inshallah, a movement that will see a different Pakistan. Inshallah.
Inshallah, Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Wa
wa
alaikum
barakatuh.
salam.
Prof. Junaid Ahmad joining us this morning, unpacking the political landscape and the dynamics that are playing out in Pakistan and how resistance could be the tool to reshape the political landscape of Pakistan. With that, we're going for a break. We'll be back.